The moment Orochimaru crossed the point of no return was marked by acts of transgression that shocked even his former masters and closest companions, such as the venerable Third Hokage, who once viewed him as a son. Genetic manipulation, the creation of artificial beings in his secret laboratories, hidden throughout the world, and the relentless quest for bodies to house his own consciousness through forbidden and painful rituals revealed a complete and irremediable shift in his worldview. He ceased to consider himself part of the ninja community, with its rules, its honor, and its bonds of camaraderie. He positioned himself as a being above it, a distant observer and manipulator of others' destinies, a creator in his own right, a god in the making. His morality, if any shred remained after so many experiments, was completely subverted and redefined by himself. He rationalized his most deplorable and cruel actions as absolutely necessary sacrifices for the advancement of knowledge, for the breaking of paradigms that, according to him, imprisoned humanity in its ignorance, fragility, and finitude. Orochimaru questioned the very nature of ethics in life, arguing that the rules imposed by society were merely artificial limitations that prevented true progress and inevitable evolution. This stance, though repugnant, posed a disturbing dilemma for anyone who observed him with any depth. What if, in his relentless pursuit of knowledge that eluded mortals, Orochimaru was glimpsing a fundamental truth about existence that others were simply unable to comprehend, accept, or even conceive? This distorted worldview, where he was the sole agent of true progress and all others were merely disposable means to his ends, solidified his total detachment from humanity. He no longer saw value in interpersonal relationships, emotional bonds, or the complexities of social coexistence. Only the incessant pursuit of more knowledge and power motivated him, becoming his sole purpose and reason for being. His journey had become solitary, relentless, and without room for regret or retreat. His most disturbing question hung in the air like a somber echo of his own mind. Ultimately, aren't true immortality and infinite knowledge worth any sacrifice, no matter how great, how cruel, how heinous the cost to obtain them? To understand Orochimaru's mind, we need to go beyond the superficial definition of villain and delve into the intricate, chilling, and at times frighteningly coherent logic that governs his actions. His journey was not driven by a desire for pure chaos, meaningless destruction, or power for power's sake. It was fueled by a fervent and unwavering belief that supreme knowledge was the key to transcending all human and natural limitations. He saw life as a continuous learning cycle, and immortality as the only way to complete this journey without interruption, to absorb every nuance, every secret, every hidden truth of the universe. From a psychological standpoint, we can analyze his behavior through a radical distortion of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. While most human beings seek self-actualization after satisfying basic needs like safety, belonging, and esteem, Orochimaru seemed to place self-actualization through infinite knowledge and prolonged existence itself above all other needs, including social ones and the safety of others. His obsession can be compared to that of a scientist who crosses all ethical boundaries in pursuit of a monumental discovery, justifying it solely by the advancement of knowledge. He wasn't seeking to be a dictator to rule others, but rather a being who possessed all knowledge, capable of transcending biological nature itself. His motivation was more intrinsic and existential than political. Comparing him to other fictional characters obsessed with knowledge and overcoming death, such as Mary Shelley's Victor Frankenstein, or even Dracula in his quest for a type of immortality, we see a similar pattern: the unrestrained pursuit of unraveling the secrets of life and creation leads to unexpected and often grim results. In real-life cases of researchers who operated outside ethical norms, there's a progressive dehumanization of the subject of study and a justification of actions in the name of scientific progress, no matter the human cost. For Orochimaru, this logic was unquestionable. Every experiment, every genetic manipulation, every body used was another step towards his version of divinity, of knowledge and existence. His actions were not the result of a momentary fit of madness. They were, to him, manifestations of a cold, precise, and ruthless calculation in pursuit of a final goal he considered the most grandiose of all. It wasn't madness. It was cold calculation. Orochimaru's legacy, even after his countless transgressions, transformations, and periods of seclusion, and even surprising apparent redemption, is complex, indelible, and profoundly enduring. He didn't just leave a trail of challenges and radical changes in the ninja world. He fundamentally shaped how many subsequent characters approach life, science, ethics, and morality itself. His experiments, though obtained through questionable and often heinous means, opened doors to new understandings of the human body, the mind, and the innate and latent capabilities that could be awakened or artificially created. The consequences of his actions echoed through generations, forcing the ninja community to confront the limits of ethics, ambition, and the very definition of what it means to be human in a world with such vast powers. The continued presence of his experiments, the rise of his apprentices who carry part of his ideology, and even the surprising and ambiguous re-evaluation of his figure in the narrative, lead us to question, who are we to judge someone's pursuit of knowledge that transcends our own understanding and our deepest fears? Although his methods were unacceptable and often cruel, the question remains, to what extent can the pursuit of advancement and understanding justify breaking barriers, even if those barriers are ethical and human in nature? Orochimaru became more than a villain. He is a myth, a figure symbolizing the intrinsic duality between genius and shadow, daring innovation and the destruction that can arise from it. His existence forces us to reflect on the dangers of unbridled obsession and the importance of a firm moral compass, even in the most ambitious journeys of discovery. His cycle of transformations, rebirths, and eventual adaptability, though frightening and somewhat bizarre, also suggests that the pursuit of knowledge is a continuous and cyclical process which can take different forms and manifestations. And perhaps, on the grand stage of existence, he was not the last to embark on this relentless quest for something that transcends life itself. Orochimaru's journey reminds us that the line between genius and obsession is thin, and that the insatiable desire for knowledge can lead to unimaginable paths. His story invites us to ask, what are the limits of our own curiosity? And what would we be willing to sacrifice to unravel the deepest secrets of the universe? A brilliant mind, but without limits, can be the greatest of creations, or the greatest danger to everything we know. Have you ever wondered what drives someone to challenge the very limits of existence, to seek a power that transcends human comprehension? Imagine a brilliant mind, fueled by an insatiable desire to unravel the universe's deepest secrets. But what if this quest turned into an all-consuming obsession, capable of overriding any barrier, including human life itself? Prepare for a fascinating, yet disturbing, journey into the hidden depths of a complex and unique psyche, because what you're about to discover will redefine your perception of genius, morality, and the insatiable inner journey. It all begins in Konoha, the Hidden Leaf Village, a place of rigorous training and development for young shinobi, where loyalty and teamwork are pillars. In this setting of discipline, apparent camaraderie, and honor, a young prodigy emerges, Orochimaru. From an early age, he stood out not only for his exceptional ninja skills, which put him far ahead of his peers, but for an extraordinarily inquisitive mind that questioned every rule, every dogma, every limit imposed by society or by nature itself. For Orochimaru, the existing boundaries of knowledge were not insurmountable obstacles, but mere starting points for a much deeper and more ambitious exploration. He observed nature in its cruelty and beauty, life in its cycles of birth and passage, and the complex and fascinating functioning of the human body with an almost supernatural intensity, a curiosity that few beings possessed or dared to explore. His fascination was palpable, but it was accompanied by a deep and growing unease. The finitude of life, the limitation of time available to absorb all the knowledge he craved. He saw death not as a natural cycle, but as a brutal interruption, an insurmountable barrier to obtaining complete knowledge. The environment of Konoha, though structured and theoretically protective, also exposed its inhabitants to inevitable losses amidst a world of conflict. Orochimaru witnessed the passing of loved ones, the abrupt interruption of promising paths for talented shinobi. For him, each life that faded away represented more than emotional pain. It was a potential for knowledge lost forever, an invaluable source of data, experiences, and capabilities that vanished without a trace. This repeated observation of human vulnerability in the face of time and the unknown, which for most would be just part of the natural cycle of life and war, ignited a flame in Orochimaru, an almost desperate urgency to transcend the barriers of mortality to ensure the infinite continuation of his journey of learning. His mind was already beginning to conceive that death was merely an obstacle to be overcome, not a final destination. But there was something in his way of seeing the world that no one, not even his revered master, the third Hokage, saw coming. A darkness germinating within his brilliant intellect. The turning point in Orochimaru's trajectory was not a single, isolated event, but a series of cumulative observations and experiences that culminated in a profound internal rupture in his worldview. One of the most significant catalysts, though subtle in its initial manifestation, was the early loss of his parents. In a world of constant conflict and imminent danger, losing family was a common burden, but for young Orochimaru, this experience transcended conventional grief. For him, this loss was not just overwhelming emotional pain, but a clear and undeniable demonstration of the inherent fragility of existence and the abrupt interruption of the flow of information and experiences a life could accumulate. The inability to halt fate, to reverse the body's deterioration process, and to preserve an individual's consciousness and knowledge became an obsession that corroded his soul and drove him to seek the impossible. During this period of deep unease and dissatisfaction with biological limitations, Orochimaru began delving into forbidden techniques, eagerly seeking alternative ways to circumvent the restrictions imposed by the physical body. He started to view the body not as a sacred and untouchable entity, but as a malleable vessel, a complex tool, but one capable of enhancement, modification, and even replacement. Psychology would explain this transformation as a radical defense mechanism, a desperate attempt to gain control over an aspect of life, finitude, loss, and death itself that proved absolutely uncontrollable. The pursuit of immortality, in this context, wasn't just a whim for power over others, but a visceral way to avoid the unbearable pain of loss, to ensure the infinite continuation of his quest for knowledge, and fundamentally, to exert absolute dominion over his own existence, becoming his own god. He began to experiment, to test the limits of what was considered ethically acceptable, and even what was humanly possible, all in the name of his insatiable research. This transition, from a brilliant student and promising ninja to a ruthless and amoral researcher, marked the beginning of his transformation. The subtle line between a genuine desire to learn and a complete and terrifying lack of scruples began to irreversibly blur. He no longer saw barriers to what could be done in the name of advancing his own knowledge. He was building a new path, a solitary and dangerous one, and that's where everything began to unravel, starting with his own humanity. With the rupture established and the seed of immortality planted and flourishing in his mind, Orochimaru's psyche began to mold itself into a peculiar, cold, and profoundly disturbing structure, where the pursuit of unlimited knowledge and the transcendence of existence itself were the central and unshakable pillars of his new philosophy. His words and actions, once merely eccentric to some, began to reveal a chilling and calculating inner logic that, though shocking and repulsive to most others, was perfectly coherent and self-justified to him. He saw human beings not as individuals with complex emotions, dreams, and inherent rights, but as mere biological organisms, capable of manipulation, dissection, and study in the name of an objective he considered far greater: the accelerated evolution of his own consciousness and the acquisition of all the knowledge the universe could offer. For Orochimaru, life itself, in all its forms and manifestations, was a vast and infinite laboratory. There was no room for sentimentality, for emotional attachments that could hinder his thirst for exploration, or for moral restraints imposed by limited humans that could impede the relentless advance of his research. Obtaining new jutsu, meticulously understanding every tissue, every cell, every strand of DNA, were crucial and necessary steps in his journey to become an omniscient entity, a being who understood all the mysteries of life, death, and the universe itself. Psychologically, we can compare this mindset to that of an extremely focused and obsessed scientist, but completely devoid of the ethical breaks that govern responsible research. The absence of empathy, the objectification of others, reducing them to mere test subjects, and the justification of his actions as necessary sacrifices for progress became essential tools for achieving his ends. He was a meticulous architect of his own darkness, building a path where only the final result, immortality and absolute knowledge, mattered. Morality, for him, was a mere obstacle, a human illusion to be circumvented in his grand ascent. But the true monster was still dormant, waiting for the moment of its full and terrifying manifestation.